Okay.
So when you said my dad, it won't be their dad.
Okay, so so I should be more explicit. Yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit more, but it was great. That was a great story. If you
Uh-huh.
could recap that in a way where, you're talking to, an audience,
Yeah.
uh, then that would be great. And I'm going to put you all back on mute.
Yeah. One of the things that I pointed out was that the Student Committee on Appeal for Human Rights, um, it was a student movement sort of in Atlanta, and it included all of the Atlanta University schools and colleges. But Julian Bond actually dropped out of school to sort of full-time work with SNCC here in Atlanta. And I remember that because I think we probably would have graduated together. But because Julian dropped out, I think he ended up graduating 2 years after I did. But did just a great job and was fully committed to the movement.
Okay, so let's talk about the desegregation of municipal facilities. Excuse me, public schools and parks and city-owned swimming pools, etc.
Well, I think a lot of that desegregation occurred after I left. When we were in school, those places were not desegregated, but I think in part as a result of the student movement, just as restaurants and businesses decided it was time to desegregate or integrate, a lot of other facilities followed, with the leadership. Atlanta had leadership in the business community, and that's how it was different from a lot of other cities. Atlanta had leadership in the black community, and it had the leadership in the business community. And when the business community decided that we weren't going away, I think they sat down with the leadership of Coca-Cola and some others and decided that it was time to act. But it means a lot to me. I know a lot of people take it for granted, but I know when I was in medical school, I enjoyed coming to Atlanta and being able to eat in restaurants downtown without getting arrested. And so things that young people today take for granted. See, because Pasca's was really the only restaurant, for the most part, that we could go and sit down and eat when I was a student. And I remember how important that was. I remember usually when we got out of jail, the first place we would go would be the Pasca's. And of course, a lot of our meetings were held there. So I still insist on going to Pasca's on a regular basis.
And I understand the students brought a lawsuit against the city to help move that effort along to desegregate municipal facilities.
Yeah, the students in Atlanta, I think, did a great job of planning and foresight and bringing lawsuits and really pushing for change. It was a very informed. I'm not surprised that people like Marion Wright Edelman, Marion went on to become the first black student to graduate from the law school in Mississippi. And as you know, she went on to develop the Children's Defense Fund. And we still have great communication.
Okay, let's talk about some of the businesses. We talked a little bit about that already, but that the students targeted the Heart of Atlanta Motel and Pickricks.
Well, again, this is where my memory is not as acute as I would like for it to be. I remember a few of the businesses. I certainly remember Leb's, the restaurant that I think I may have been arrested twice in Leb's, and a lot of students, we targeted that. Rich's, of course, when we first started, was segregated, and we were concerned that they weren't hiring blacks, but really taking our money. And so it was one of the first facilities that we targeted, and we targeted several restaurants. But I apologize that my memory doesn't bring back the name of all the businesses.
And in the Pilgrimage for Democracy, the mass demonstration that took place in Hurt Park.
I think one of the really memorable things that the students did was to organize and get that kind of turnout. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that for the most part, there were only a few students involved in the movement. It was not like half of the students in the AU Center were coming out. There were a few students who were consistently pushing for change and going to jail. But I do think there were two events, and that was one of them. The other one was the one I mentioned when we made the commitment to fill the jails and were able to get a major turnout of students in Atlanta that fill the jails in Atlanta.
Okay. So let's talk about the Atlanta Inquirer and
But Tracy, let me jump in one more time. Doctor, let me ask, can you describe the event and like kind of what happened or what the program at the event was kind of like? What kind of happened at what happened there?
Well,
Speeches or, anything like that.
well, I wish I could be more specific. I wish I could tell you that I had an acute memory for all of those events, and the fact of the matter is I don't any longer. But I do remember controversy, of course. That's the kind of thing you remember. And I know there were a few occasions on which the students were asked to sort of back off or wait. And I specifically remember during the time that Senator Leroy Johnson was running, there were some people who sort of appealed to the students to slow down or not to raise a lot of attention during that time. So there was disagreement about issues like that, about when we should slow down as opposed to continuing the momentum of the movement. And so that I remember, but I don't remember all the places. I remember one Memorial Church and the meeting that took place there and the controversy there about the student activity. There was a time we disagreed with Dr. King, but we always respected him. A group of students and I used to walk from the Morehouse campus to Ebenezer whenever we knew that Dr. King was speaking. And he was a tremendous motivation. We did not always agree on the pace of the movement. And I think that's what it means to be students. You're not supposed to necessarily agree with adults all the time.
Okay, so the Atlanta Inquirer, they were known for providing news from a fair and impartial perspective without fear or favor, and known as the voice for the voiceless. You want to talk about the impact that Atlanta Inquirer had and how they came together, and that was the students' paper?
Well, I remember they played a tremendous role, and I guess the present editor, John Smith, graduated a few years ahead of me. He may have graduated in the late 50s, and I graduated in '63, but I know that over all of these years, the Atlanta